Hey, everybody, and welcome to the BA Zone's pre-show. We're going to get going tonight in just about 3 minutes. Hope everybody's doing fantastic and having a great start to the work week. Hopefully it's happy and productive. And tonight we're sticking with sort of the nuts and bolts theme for the beginning of this year. And we're going to be talking about project deliverables, specifically the business or the requirements document. And what actually goes into those documents. So we'll be going in just a few minutes here. Kathleen is in the background chatting away there and doing stuff. But I don't know what you did this week. I actually, for the first time in my life, I cook quite a bit, but for the first time in my life, I actually made chili. It was a vegetarian chili. And so it was a 3-bean chili. And so I've been eating that for 2 days. Yeah, and I'm sitting on a metal chair, so anything could happen this evening. So we'll have to see if the show is really a true blowout, or if we can keep everything nice and contained. But anyway, it was really good, and I really didn't have a recipe, so I sort of just made it on the fly. What we do a lot in life is sort of make things up as we go along, and then some other things we really sort of follow the recipe. And tonight's one of those nights where we're going to show you the basic recipe of a requirements document, and then you're free to add a little of this, take a little of that away, whatever is specific to your project. So it should be a fun night. So if you know anybody who might be interested in this, go out, tag them, let us know. Last week's show, we had a great show last week. No, it's just running right on my mind. We were talking about setting up the business analyst shared drives. And that's a great show if you want to go out and see. And for all you Periscope fans, it's our 100th show on Periscope. So yay. So there's 100 shows to go out there and watch on Periscope. So if you're bored or you really want to understand more about business analysts, run right out there on Periscope and look us up. So tonight's going to be the 100th show of maybe we hope 100 or a few hundred more to come. So we're just going to go. We got 1 minute left to go here. So get your fluffy slippers, get your hot cup of tea or your ice cold beverage or whatever you prefer. Get your snacks, and we'll be going live in just a minute. Kathleen, everything okay? Sounding on the back end, ready to go? She may be on mute, but we are.
Yes, I don't have a shortcut for my mute button. Yet we are
okay.
all set and ready to rock.
And we are ready to rock. So let's get started. It's 8:00. Prime time. Welcome everybody to the BA Zones live show. I'm Marianne Morrison, and my co-defendant tonight, we're calling her a co-defendant tonight, is Kathleen Sinnott, and she's in the back end, and we make up the BA Zone. And tonight, I was just saying during the pre-show, if you're there, we're going to be talking about project deliverables, specifically the requirements document, and actually what goes into that requirements document. So buckle up. But before you do that, let's get some circulation going while we move to the sound of Kathleen's intro. So take it away, Kathleen. Oh, that gets the blood going, doesn't it? Okay, everybody. So we're going to be talking about the requirements document and what actually goes into the requirements document. So again, if you know anybody who might be interested, please go out there and tag them, let them know that we're doing this, and send us some hearts of love. And if you have any comments during the show, please feel free to send them in, and we'll respond to them online. So the business requirements document. Oh, hey, John. Chili. He was listening to the pre-show saying how I made vegetarian chili, but I digress. It was really good chili. Okay, so business requirements or requirements documents in general, when they're done really well, get everybody up and on the same page together. From the business to whether it's operations, marketing, sales, to the business analysts, to the project management software developers, QA. everybody is sort of going towards the same goal when the requirements document is really done well. And requirements document, they typically outline, the needs of the business, and if there is a particular need and a solution that we then develop together or take care of together. So there's no single way of creating a requirements document. And a lot of your companies should check with your company to see if they actually have a template. We're going to be talking about templates tonight. But keep in mind that whatever you decide to create, the requirements document should be as lean as possible, but not at the cost of misinterpretation. So we want to make sure that everything is really succinct and everything is really clear. So we're going to walk you through, the standard components of a business requirements a document. And Kathleen, we have some slides that we're going to bring up, and she'll do that in just a second. There we go. There's a little face. Hello. There she is. She gets to see her once in a while. So requirements, a template for success. So what you want to do with requirements, like a business requirements document or any other type of documentation, the best thing to do is always create a template. If you create a template, you can reuse it for different types of projects. You can standardize the general layout so it's always the same. People know what to expect. It's much easier on you as a BA. And things like you want to, in addition to just being text, because I've seen a lot of requirements documents that are just simply text, but you do want to include some visual representation. And you want to be able to compartmentalize the components within the document so you can quickly swap them in or swap them out. There's going to be instances, and we're going to walk through some of the standard components that go into the requirements document, but there are going to be instances where you're not going to use all of these components, or you may add in additional components to the document. And it all depends on the project. And it all depends on the size of the project. It may not even be a project. It may be a feature that you're designing. In some cases, there are some elements that you can take out of the document or add to the document. So it's really easy to create, a rather large template for those bigger projects and a smaller document or a mini document for those, sort of small features where a requirement, if they put in an enhancement request through a particular system that you may have that gathers those requests, the user requests. Sometimes all of the requirements are right there in that request. And you just need to update your standard documentation. You don't necessarily need a requirements document. Then there's the next level up where you might have a feature and it's a small mini requirement. Then you've got those full-blown projects that need much more robust set of components. So we're going to go through just a few of those standards. So the first thing that you want to start with when you're creating a template is to start with the title page. I believe that's the next slide, right, Kath? So key features that you want to make sure you have on that title page all the time is the company that you're working for, their logo. Everybody loves to see their own logo, and at least we know that's where that documentation is coming from. Sometimes we'll get business requirements if you're working with a vendor or if you're working with someone you may have licensed to create a feature with. They may have their own set of requirements. So it's always really helpful to understand where that document is coming from. And the logo really helps sort of set that localization where it's coming from. The next thing you want on that title page is a project name. And this would be something like, I don't know, redesign the sales quadrant or whatever the feature name might be. Sometimes if you are using some type of enhancement management system or bug system, sometimes that you can put enhancements in there. There are numbers assigned to that, or you may assign a number yourself so that it's easier to find that particular document. Because don't forget, you might reuse a project name over and over again, but a unique number is something, that's going to be unique. Ergo, it's in the name. So you definitely want to include a title and a unique ID number. Then you want to list what type of document it is. In this case, it would be the business requirements document or business requirement tech spec, because we sort of use a hybrid, not a strict business document. We find that the hybrids convey the message just a little bit better. So you want to say what type of document it is, and that usually is right below the project name. In addition to that, you're going to want a version number. And version numbers are really easy, right? You just start with 1.0. That's the first requirement document you're going to do. If you make a small adjustment to that requirement document, well, then you want to put it and make that new version number 1.1. If you were creating something completely different from the original spec, so if you were redesigning a screen completely, then of course your version number would start with 2.0 because it's a bigger version change. But definitely put that version number in there. If you're emailing these documents back and forth, even in the email, put in the subject line, put the requirement and put the version number and date in there as well, so that people know when they're even looking through their emails, if they're getting multiple versions of something, they know what to look for and what they're getting. And of course, as I just said, the last time that the requirements document was updated. And again, the format of those title pages can vary. They can be different. You can add all kinds of things, but those what are they? 5 elements. Those you should really. They're sort of a must for that title page. Okay. Second slide. After the title page, you're going to want to have a version control or a version history page. It could be more than one page depending on how many versions you do of this particular document. So in a version control page, you just want a little bullet point, a little brief description of what this document is about. It doesn't have to be the full-blown overview. It could just be simply, this is a spec that is a redesign of this particular page or whatever, and it is intended to use for this particular application or one or more applications. And you also want to say who the intended audience is for this document. And you could list all of them. It's the business analyst, the developer, QA, business owners, key stakeholders. It's just, sort of a comma delineated little list of who it's intended for. Beneath those 2 bullets, create a grid, a document history grid. And basically, it's just a table. It's going to have your version numbers on there. It'll have the particular change that you're doing, and a couple of other columns. Whatever you want to put in there, but you definitely want the version number, the control number, and the date that particular change was made, who the author or the author of the document is, and who is the updater of that particular version. So it's 3 or 4 of columns on a grid. And you're going to track that. You're going to go from 1.0 to 1.1 to 1.2, 2.0, etc. And the smaller changes you've made. Typically, a lot of those changes are going to happen after you have a meeting and you go through the review of the document. There are going to be changes that are made, significant changes that you're going to list and change that version number for. Beneath that grid, you're going to want to have the document approval grid, and that is you're moving from a draft, to a final document to the final approved document. And those are sort of the different steps. Who were the people that were signing off? If it's a signature, is it an e-signature or their signature? Sometimes I approve email is enough. And the date of those status changes. So that sort of keeps a track of who did what, why it was changed. So you can always go back and say, oh, that's why we made that change. It was right here. And you did approve that change because it's right here. So that's sort of an important thing. And as I said, those can, because they're grids and you can make multiple changes, it may go over more than 1 or 2 pages or more, depending on how often you change the document. So after the version control page, you typically have a table of contents page. So the table of contents provides an at-a-glance view of what your document contains, and it also helps people navigate through the document. So when it comes to tables of contents, I mean, there are multiple formats out there that you can choose from. Select a style. And, the way to keep that table of contents accurate as to what you're putting in your document, if you apply heading styles to your document, it will automatically build and update that table of contents for you. So you don't have to go back and say, oh, I moved this to page 6, I moved that to page 5. So that table of contents comes in handy. In some smaller features where the document might be really small, table of contents is one of those things that you don't have to include, but it is very helpful when you get to a certain number of pages, so that people can find what they're looking for. Okay, following the table of contents, you're going to want to do your project overview. Now, the project overview is more of a section, and it contains multiple things within that. And these are sort of the headings that can come underneath that project overview. I mean, you definitely want to give an overview of the project, why, what it is, how you came to the decision to do this type of thing. Just a very high level overview. And within that, you're also going to say, for this particular project, what is in scope and what is out of scope. And when it comes to what is in scope, it can be, there's different ways of laying it out. You can say that this is all in scope for phase 1. This is, or for this iteration, and this is what is in scope for the next iteration. So you can actually list it out by, here's phase 1 or iteration 1, here's phase 2, all in scope. And then another big header, what is considered to be out of scope. And out of scope may be out of scope forever or permanently, or it could be out of scope just for this iteration or phase. And the next phase or generation that it will be in is TBD, to be determined. Also within the project overview, you're going to want to list out any assumptions. There may or may not be any. Again, it depends on the project or the size that you're doing, but these are the things we're assuming. So, for example, we're assuming we're going to have this much money to complete this project. That's a pretty good assumption, because if that assumption changes in any way, guess what? Part of the house isn't being built. We're going to have to give up that master suite bathroom, and we're just going to put in a powder room. So those are some of the things for, your assumptions. You also want to list out any key decisions that have been made that is moving this project forward, or that for the reasoning for this project. And you also want to list out any constraints. What are some of the things that is constraining or holding back part of this project? Sometimes developers can be really creative, as they should be. But sometimes there are external constraints as to why we can't do certain things. And a good example of that might be government rules or government policies that constrain us or stop us from doing a certain thing. So if there are any of those type of constraints, whether they be financial or rules or regulations, you want to list those out as well. And a lot, these could be bullet points. I mean, it's nothing that has to be, you definitely want it to stand out and be clear when you're talking about assumptions, decisions, and constraints, whether you use a grid or bullets. Try not to create these huge paragraphs where people have to read and find exactly what it is they have to be careful of, what they're assuming, or the decisions or constraints. Again, keep it lean, keep it very sharp and focused. So that's your project overview. Once you get the project overview done, I sip while Kathleen changes the slides. Okay, the next huge chunk is the actual requirements section. Now, there are a ton of ways to do this and list this out as well. I prefer, and this is what we find tend to works out really well. The first part of the requirements components is we like to list all of the rules. whether they be the business rules, the functional rules, any validation rules, any rules in general. We just sort of break them out by those rules. The business rules obviously are going to drive a lot of what's going on, what we're going to be developing. And obviously, the functional rules support those business rules. They sort of say, this is what the system or the application, how it should respond to these business needs. And then how do we validate that that's actually happening? What do we look at? What are the validation rules? So, and those are sort of listed out. You can list them out any way. I prefer to do it in a grid. Give them a unique ID number so that you can map them from use cases to business rules to comps that you create. And it's a good way for anyone to say in QA that this particular business rule was not followed during testing. So you definitely want to give it a unique ID number. They usually start with a business rule, for example, always starts with BR, business rule, right? So that you can say it's different from an FR, a functional rule, or a VR, a validation rule. And, it's an underscore, give it a unique number, or you can actually also abbreviate the page that it's from. So if it's a sales page, you could say BR underscore SP for sales page underscore, and then the unique number. And unique number can start out with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just run right down consecutive numbers, or 1.1, 1.2, depending on the level that you're going down to. So that's it, that unique ID number and what is actually the rule. And you can do that in a 2-column grid for business rules, functional rules, and validation rules. Then you get into the functional requirements section. The functional requirements section is this is what the system should do. And it's at a word level. They're giving exactly, we want it to do this, 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 this. They can be multiple pages, bullet points, headers, subheaders, etc. And then follow that functional rules by any data requirements that you need. And this would be data elements on the page. It could be the movement of data, status changes, etc. And beneath the data requirements, any reporting requirements. And a lot of people actually forget reporting requirements. It's pretty important. If you're doing any kind of a feature, any kind of a system change or a redesign, and especially if you're changing any data elements or calculations, you really have to look, how does it affect the reporting? If you have dashboard reporting or whether you have regular reporting that you can go in and create paper reports out of, you definitely need to always be thinking about those reporting requirements. And if you haven't, get yourself an inventory of those reports and the columns and the data they contain. That could be a lengthy project depending on how many reports you have, because there could be a ton of ad hoc reports, et cetera. But that's a whole other issue that we can get into, reporting and how to handle those, getting them under control or creating a dashboard. That'll be for another show. Okay, so after you get all those requirements section done, the next section is the use cases. Use cases are really important as well. And it's something that, business rules, all the rules I would not leave out, and I would not leave out use cases. They go hand in hand with comps. Some of the components within a use case is, again, just like a business rule or a data rule, validation rule, you have a use case ID that's unique and a name, and you give a little overview of what that use case is about. Now, the use cases aren't to be confused with, the little stick figure or the UML diagrams. This is actually a use case. It's in a nice little template, and it contains who the primary actor is. It lists out the preconditions that have to exist for this use case to actually trigger or occur. And then it's going to list out step by step the positive flow of movement within the application. So a user enters in their username. How does the system respond? And then the next thing, they enter in their password. How does the system respond? And it's all that positive, actually, like getting you into the system or any type of a page that you're going to be using. What is the positive flow? Then, in addition to that, and those are numbered step by step. This step one, this is how the system responds. Step two, this is how the system responds. At the bottom of that, you have the alternate flows. So for each step, if there's an alternate path that could occur in step one, well, then the alternate flow would be 1.1, 1.2. This is what happens. This is the result. And then after those flows, what are the post conditions? What happens after that? That typically it's a save. User might get a response that your save has been successful. That's the post condition. There could be more than one of those. But the use cases are very important, and there could be many of them. You'll have typically an add, an edit, an update use case, depending on what you're doing. Excuse me. And they are important because at the bottom of that, you can also say, by the way, these are the comps or the screens that you've designed. These are the numbered screen designs that actually refer to this use case. So you see everything ties together through these unique numbers and through the different sections of the requirements document. So don't skimp on the use cases, because that will tell those developers what needs to be designed and how to step through that application. They're really important, and they're really helpful, and they're really fun to do once you get the hang of them. Okay, I'm a sipping. Kathleen is a sliding. Before we get into this comp, maybe we should I just want to take a break here. I don't know if anybody has any questions out there, but just to let you know, we do this obviously every Tuesday night, but here are some of the places. Kathleen, if you can pull up that slide that says all the fun places that everybody can find us on. Obviously, we have our own website, thebazone.com. You can go there if you don't want to comment, or you don't have any questions, or maybe you think about questions after the show. You can go there and drop us a line. I know a lot of people watch us live as well as after the fact. You can also find us on Twitter at the BA Zone, Instagram, Instagram.com, the BA Zone, Periscope, Periscope.tv, the BA Zone, which I said before, we're on our 100th show on Periscope. So everybody out there, thanks so much for watching us. We're also available on Facebook.com, the BA Zone, and YouTube.com, the BA Zone. So please feel free to watch any of the other shows that we have out there. And if you have any suggestions for shows, please drop us a line. If there's anything that you really want to learn about or understand, we're here to help you. And we do get a lot of our shows based on your suggestions and your comments. So please feel free to do that. Okay, back to the slides. Okay, the next section after the use cases, you're going to include comps. If you can't do comps, then maybe wireframes. This gives your audience, especially the user community, the ability to actually conceptualize or see what you're talking about, or the potential or the possibilities. We use comps or wireframes a lot to sort of get our ideas across, and actually it helps open up a line of communication with the users. If they see this, it sort of triggers something else in their mind, and they go, oh, I forgot this, and it helps you get a lot more requirements that way. So it's always helpful to include those comps of the conceptual design or the page layouts. So again, the comps are just a visual representation of what you intend to put in the page, or what it will look like. So again, you want to give those unique IDs that can be traced back to a use case or a business rule. You're going to have the actual page or the screen laid out, and navigation notes. The way we typically do this is we will take Snagit or some type of other tool where you can go in and capture a piece of an existing screen, if it exists already. If it doesn't exist, you sort of use little boxes and things to create a page. But if it already exists, just take a little Snagit of the page, pop it down there, put a couple little number box and say, this is what this particular function does. And over on the right-hand side of the entire comp, you have a galley with the numbers and what the description of that number is. So one may be, enter your user ID. Two may be enter your password, et cetera, et cetera. So you can create multiple pages to help people walk them through. It also helps developers to see where you're coming from or where the users are coming from. Now, that's not to say that developers will not change that design, because obviously, this is especially true if you don't have a web designer, and even with a web designer, but developers may have a better way of doing something or a better idea. So these comps you may not use them for quality assurance because they could change, but it definitely conveys the idea or the meaning behind where you're going, and they're very helpful. Okay. I'm sipping. Are you sliding? Thank you. Oh, that's comps. Okay. So onward to the next slide. Okay. So we're getting towards the end. And you always want to include a glossary of terms. So the glossary of terms gets everybody on the same page as to what things mean. It's usually done in a table format, nice little grid. Excuse me, here's the term. Here's the acronym for the term. So if it's business requirements document, the acronym might be BRD, business requirements document, and then a description of what that means. A glossary is really important because across departments, if you're creating an application that goes across different departments, terms mean different things to different people. So it's very helpful to spell out exactly, in this case, what you mean by this term, so everyone is on the same page. A lot of people put the glossary towards the end. If I'm working on a new project, I sort of put the glossary up front so that before people read the document, they're understanding the terms that they're seeing. But again, you can pick and choose where you put it. There's no clear pattern. Most people put it towards the end. But it's especially helpful if you have an offshore team, if you have offshore developers, offshore QA, even within your own in-house. People may have developers may have a different term in the database for something and not understand really what it means on the front end. So again, glossary is great to have. The more familiar you become with a product, or if the developer's been around for a while, you may or may not, you may choose to take that out of smaller documents. It might not be necessary, but again, it's one of the components that are sort of standard with the requirements document. Okay, Kathleen. Okay, so then there's those are sort of the standard. Now, depending on whether you're waterfall, you're agile, you're a combination, you're going to have different components. You may have user stories instead of use cases, whatever that might be, as long as you're listing out those standard main components. In addition to those standard main components, you might want to include some things like, design and development notes. And that just may be around if there are different ways of presenting something, you may want to say, we really would prefer you present it this way, or if there's a certain way of developing this. A message, for example, could be on the page itself, popping up. Not popping up, I should say, just on the page itself, or it could be in a pop-up that the user has to click. So things like that, design or development notes are helpful if you want something presented in a certain way. And then there's also, you could give functionality or code examples. And again, there's the appendix with any other additional documentation. When it comes to the appendix, I just want to say something. I've seen a lot of requirements documents that have a lot of embedded links to either external URLs or just external. It doesn't even have to be a URL. It could be a link, an embedded link to somebody's H drive, which is meaningless unless you own that H drive to someone else. So you want to stay away from those embedded links. If you have to reference something, add it to the appendix if you can, if it's not too big, but definitely don't embed a lot of links back and forth. If it's a very, I stress, you really don't want a huge document. Sorry, I have a little tickle. The only time you're really going to see giant, huge documents anymore are government documents. If you work for the government, well, then you're going to have documents that are really huge, and you may want to embed links to another portion of that particular document. So those are embedded links that you can use within the same document just to make the movement back and forth easy for someone and get them back to the place they left off. But if it's in smaller type documents, again, you can embed links, but they're really handy in those giant documents. But again, most of the time, excuse me, if you're going in commercial stuff, you're looking for those leaner documents, so keep them as lean and as tight as possible, which gives you a lot less area for misinterpretation. You also don't want to document something in one area and document it again somewhere else, because you have to follow those paths too much and keep an eye on updating one. You have to update the other. Excuse me. So, and I think that's it on the slides, right? That was my last page, I do believe. So again, that's the requirements document. Again, there's no hard, fast rule of how you do them, but those components that we just showed you, if you include those in your requirements document, and again, Agile might be a little different, but if you include those, you're going to be successful, because those are the type of things that appeal to every one of the stakeholders that are involved with the project. There's a little something for business, a little something for the BA, the PMO, the QA, development, everybody. So I don't see, let's see, okay. So I don't see anybody having any other questions out there or comments. So I think we're good for tonight. I wish you all success and really lean, mean requirements document that will actually get you sign off, because everybody will be understanding exactly what we're putting out there. And again, if you want to get any details, you can go to thebazone.com and get on our mailing list. We don't do anything with that information, but you'll be the first to know about what's coming up. It's great that I'm getting to the end of the show right now, because I'm starting to get that little tickle in my throat where I'll start coughing very shortly. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. And again, please feel free to comment, send us anything after the show. We'll be happy to answer it. And we hope to see you next week on the BA Zone. Take care, everyone. Have a great week.